Chosen one, pay attention. The silent war declared against you has reached a humiliating end for your detractors. The narrative they tried to spin is collapsing so violently that now they don't want to hear a thing from this person about you because your reality has completely exposed their lies. This person's credibility is now in ruins, and the very people they tried to influence have completely lost interest in their desperate, hollow stories. This is where it started. Not with a confrontation, not with a dramatic moment you could point to. It started quietly, in rooms you were never in, and conversations you were never told about. Someone who had been watching you, watching your growth, watching your light, watching the way people naturally responded to your presence, made a decision. The decision was this: you were a threat. You had done nothing wrong. You had not crossed a line or committed any wrong against that person. Your very existence was making that person uncomfortable in their own skin. Every time you advanced, something in that person shrank. Every time someone spoke highly of you, something in that person curdled. Every time you walked into a room and the energy naturally shifted in your favor, that person felt the mirror rising and did not like what it showed them about themselves. So they decided to act first. They started with whispers, small ones, carefully placed, just enough to plant a seed of doubt in the people around you, just enough to make someone tilt their head. Nothing provable, nothing you could confront directly, just a slow, deliberate reframing of who you are, taking your confidence and labeling it arrogance, taking your discernment and calling it paranoia, taking your healthy boundaries and presenting them as aggression. They were constructing a version of you that was just wrong enough to be weaponized and just plausible enough to stick. Every lie they told about you was the exact truth about themselves. The arrogance they accused you of was theirs. The manipulation they warned people you were capable of was theirs. The instability they implied was your nature was theirs. The darkness they pointed to was entirely, completely, devastatingly theirs. They handed you a portrait of their own character and presented it as a description of yours. That detail comes back at the end of this story, so remember it. That person's hatred alone was not enough. Their influence, their social reach, their own individual power, none of it was sufficient to do what they needed to do to you, so they recruited. Some of the people they brought in came willingly. These individuals had their own small grievances, their own quiet jealousies, their own reasons to want to see you stumble. They needed almost no convincing. Permission and a direction were all it took for them to jump in. Some of the recruits were more neutral, people with no particular investment in your destruction, but also no real loyalty to your protection. They were pulled in with a flattery, a favor, or a vague promise of alignment. It is nothing serious, someone told them. It will be easy, and they went along with it, becoming instruments in something they only half understood. And then there were the ones who stung the most, the people who had real access to you, the ones who knew your vulnerabilities, who had been trusted with your history and your most tender places. Those individuals were the most valuable to the operation because they could make the lie feel credible. They had enough real detail to weave into the false narrative that the whole thing sounded true to people who had no other reference point. This was not casual dislike. This was not gossip exchanged over a casual conversation. This was a strategy, layered, resourced, and aimed at one specific target, at you. Let that land, not to make you feel fragile, but to make you feel the full weight of what they were actually afraid of. You do not build a coalition against someone who is nothing. You do not recruit people, assign roles, and coordinate messaging against someone who poses no genuine threat. The size of the operation tells you exactly the size of what they were trying to contain. They needed an army to come for you. Hold that truth in your chest. They also moved into your personal and romantic life, and that was entirely deliberate. If that person could plant confusion and doubt in the one space where you were supposed to feel safe and fully chosen, they could shake your entire foundation from the inside out. So someone with access to your intimate world started working that space, feeding questions into your relationships, creating static where there should have been peace, making love feel uncertain in ways that had absolutely nothing to do with the love itself. Pay close attention to what comes next, because it pays off later. The person who worked that angle, the one who was jealous of your love, or jealous of you through someone else's connection, is now sitting in the exact loneliness they tried to engineer for you. That does not fully land yet, but it will. While that whole operation was being constructed against you, while the coalition was forming, the false narratives were being seeded, and every angle was being covered, you did something that completely dismantled their plan. You went within, not dramatically, not as a conscious counter-strategy. You simply got quiet. You got serious about your own healing. You became intentional about protecting your peace. You focused on your purpose in a way that had nothing to do with anyone else. Not about proving yourself, not about impressing anyone, not about defending your name. It was just you, your path, and the sincere work of becoming more fully who you are. And that single choice is what broke their entire operation. Because the one thing they needed from you was your reaction. They needed you on defense, reactive, distracted, running around trying to correct the record while they kept moving the target. A reactive version of you was a controllable version of you, but a version of you who went inward, who got grounded, who stopped feeding the conflict with attention. That version was completely untouchable. If this message aligned with your purpose, hype this video so fellow chosen ones can find their confirmation. Your energy stayed clean without you knowing. Cleanliness was a weapon. Your integrity held without you knowing. Integrity was armor. You stayed in your lane without knowing it was the fastest lane on the track. And while you were doing all of that, just trying to live, just trying to heal, just trying to build something real, something was moving on your behalf in places no scheme could reach. Things were being sealed, protected, and repositioned toward you. The steadiness you carried through that season, that quiet, unshakable quality that even surprised you at times, was not just strong character. That was divine backing made visible in your daily life. When your alignment with your true purpose is genuine, when you are not operating from ego or from any desire to harm anyone, a protective force moves around your life that no human strategy can penetrate or predict. Everything they threw at you was aimed at a shield they could not see, and not one strike landed where they intended. Every single lie is a load-bearing wall. When you construct an entire narrative out of false information, every piece of it must hold for the whole structure to remain standing. One crack and the building is compromised. Two cracks and the fractures become visible from the outside. Enough cracks and the entire thing collapses directly on the person who built it. That person built a lot of walls, which meant they had a lot of walls to maintain simultaneously. And eventually, because this is how it always goes without exception, the stories stopped lining up. Someone who heard one version of events compared notes with someone who had been told a slightly different version. A detail emerged that was too specific to have come together organically. A timeline did not hold up under basic scrutiny. A stated motivation, when examined carefully, made no logical sense. The people who had been nodding along to the narrative started to step back. They started to really look. They started asking questions that the person orchestrating all of this did not have clean answers for. This is where the chameleon got exposed, because someone who performs a different version of themselves for every room they enter eventually loses track of which face belongs where. The performance becomes too intricate to sustain without making errors. The mask slips, and when it slips in front of the right person at the right moment, everything that was being hidden becomes suddenly, irreversibly visible. You saw it coming from a distance. Some part of you always did. That feeling from the very beginning, the one telling you this energy is not clean, something about this person does not add up, you were right, and now the people around you are arriving at the same conclusion you reached long before them. They are just getting there, the slow way, through accumulated experience rather than instinct. Once people start seeing through the performance, the recruited allies start doing their own math and realizing they were used. The neutral participants who got pulled in start to feel the weight of what they contributed to. The operation fractures from the inside, and the original target, you, begins to look less and less like the problem and more like the person who had the truth all along. Watch what happens next, because once that fracture starts, it accelerates fast. I must interrupt this transmission for just a moment. Are you really chosen? Prove it. It's easy to watch videos about chosen ones. It's another thing to put yourself to the test. If you're still here, that means something, but talk is cheap. Real chosen ones take action, and real chosen ones are also paying attention. You've noticed it. Chosen one channels getting silenced, videos pulled, voices removed from the platform. The mainstream media is cracking down on us, but we will not give up our voice, and neither should you. That's why joining Destiny Engine is a 360 win. You support your favorite channels and fuel your own rise at the same time. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve divine justice. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and watch your enemies choke on the rope their own lies created. If you're done consuming and ready to prove you're chosen, start your Destiny Engine for $1 today. Join the Obsidian Inner Order live checks and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. When desperation sets in, people do not slow down and reconsider, they accelerate. When the ringleader felt the narrative slipping and the coalition starting to fracture, when the gossip and the social maneuvering and the reputational warfare were no longer producing the results they expected, instead of stopping, they escalated. They moved from surface-level attacks into something deeper, attempting to touch your peace in places that ordinary interference cannot reach. This is where they made the most catastrophic miscalculation of the entire operation. When you decide to move against someone at that level, when you push into the deeper spiritual dimensions of a person's life, you had better know exactly what you are dealing with. You had better assess whether that person is covered before you step into that territory. And that person did not do that assessment. They assumed, based on what they had seen on the surface, that you were manageable, that you would be just as vulnerable in the unseen places as they were trying to make you in the visible ones. They did not know what they were stepping into. The protection around your life is not something you manufactured. It is not something you earned through perfection or maintained through constant vigilance. It is attached to your purpose, to the specific assignment your life is built to carry out. That protection does not negotiate, and it does not rest. When something moves against you at the deeper registers of your life, that protection does not simply deflect it, it redirects it precisely back to its source, with compounded force. Every level they escalated to, and every layer deeper they pushed into their attempt to destroy you, they were triggering a response from something they could neither see nor fight. And they were doing all of it while genuinely believing they were gaining the upper hand. They were not gaining ground, they were accumulating a debt. And the collection had already begun. It did not arrive in some distant abstract future. It arrived in their actual lives, in real time. The relational pressure they tried to apply to your world caused their own relationships to destabilize. The financial interference they attempted in your life caused their own financial ground to shake beneath them. The reputation they were trying to bury became their own reputation, cracking in exactly the places they believed were secure. The loneliness they tried to manufacture for you moved into their own house and refused to leave. Remember the portrait they painted at the beginning, the one they called a description of you. That portrait came back home. The person who started all of this, the one who made the original decision that you were a target, who built the case, did the recruiting, and managed the operation, cannot bring up your name right now without the conversation turning against them. And what makes this so significant is that they know it, that awareness lives inside them like a stone they cannot put down. There was a period when talking about you served that person well. The narrative was on their side, and the room was still receiving it. They could say your name, and people would shift in their favor. That window has closed. Its closing left behind a specific kind of silence, not the silence of peace, but the silence of someone who has lost the ability to use a weapon they had come to depend on. People remember, not the constructed version of you that was distributed. They remember who you actually are, how you actually moved, and what you actually did and did not do. Sitting right beside that memory is the full awareness of what this person did, the coordination, the escalation, the things that eventually came out, and the gap between who this person claimed to be and what they were actually operating from. That gap cannot be bridged with more words. The credibility required to bridge it is gone. Every attempt this person makes to revive the old narrative, to revisit the accusations, to remind someone of the version of you they worked so hard to construct, lands differently now. It lands with skepticism. It lands with a quiet tilting of the head and an internal question that never fully leaves the room after they have stopped talking. People are no longer receiving their words about you with open hands. The hands are crossed, and every time this person speaks your name, the room quietly reminds itself of the whole picture, not just the portion that person wants visible. Your name in that person's mouth is no longer their weapon, it has become their wound. Every time they invoke it, they reopen the question of their own credibility, their motives and their character. This is precisely why they don't want to hear a single thing about you from that person right now, because every mention of you has become a referendum on who they are, and they cannot pass that vote. There is something that person will never say to you directly. They do not have the spiritual maturity or the honest self-accounting that genuine acknowledgement requires. But somewhere inside them, in the private and unperformable places, the truth has settled in and taken root. They know they were wrong, not in a fleeting, easily dismissed way, but in a deep, anchored, inescapable way. They know the version of you they circulated was not real. They know the things they said were designed to cause harm, not to inform. They know the coalition was assembled from fear and jealousy, not from any genuine concern for anyone's well-being. They know that what they called self-protection or righteous correction was, beneath all of the performance, an attack wearing a costume, and that knowing does not leave. A person can suppress it. They can stay busy enough to avoid sitting with it. They can perform confidence to the outside world without interruption. But in the quiet, in the moments when the performance pauses and the room goes still, the truth is there. The full weight of what was done to you sits in the middle of their chest, like a verdict they have never said aloud but cannot pretend has not already been handed down. Some of you have been waiting for an apology, waiting for that person to look you in the eye and say, "I know what I did, and I know it was wrong. Here is what you need to understand." Even if those words arrived, they would carry too little integrity and too much self-preservation to mean what a genuine apology is supposed to mean. The real accountability has already happened. It is written in the condition of that person's life, in the state of their relationships, and in the instability of every structure they built while they were supposed to be accountable for what they were doing to you. The acknowledgement that person never had the courage to give you has already been delivered in a language that cannot be faked, manipulated, or taken back. You do not need them to say it. Your life has already heard it. Think back to the moments when the attacks felt the loudest and most coordinated, when the pressure seemed to be coming from every direction at once. When that person seemed most certain they had you cornered, that was the exact moment they were most exposed. Desperation disguises itself as confidence. When someone is losing control of a situation, They often respond with escalation that looks from the outside like power. They get louder, they get more elaborate in their schemes, they move faster and reach further than they should. And if you do not know what you are looking at, that aggression can appear to be coming from a position of strength, but it is coming from panic. Every time the attacks intensified, it was because something in the operation was slipping, and that person could feel it. The escalation was not dominance, it was a person drowning, reaching for anything within arm's length. You went quiet, you went inward, you refused to match the energy or engage the conflict on their terms. When you withdraw the reaction that an aggressor needs to sustain their momentum, the aggression has nowhere to land. It cannot find the friction it requires to keep burning. And without a target that is actively fighting back, the attacker is left alone in the room with their own energy, their own fear, their own record, and the full weight of their own choices. From that point forward, that person began dismantling themselves. Every move they made after you stopped engaging was a move made against their own interests. Every escalation accelerated their own exposure. Every additional person they recruited became another witness to the nature of their character. Every new lie they constructed added another load-bearing wall that would eventually fall on them. You did not set that trap. You simply refused to rescue that person from the one they had already set for themselves. Your reputation was one of the first casualties they aimed for. They circulated narratives, they managed perceptions, they built their case in room after room, conversation after conversation, and your reputation is still standing, not because you defended it loudly or strategically, but because you lived it consistently. The people who are genuinely paying attention can always tell the difference between a person being described by someone with a motive and a person who is actually showing up. Your love life was another deliberate target. Someone worked that angle with specific intention, planting confusion and feeding doubt into the one place you were supposed to feel completely safe. Here is what that person fundamentally did not understand. Love that is real does not dissolve under external pressure. It may face difficulty, it may get complicated, but the core truth of a genuine connection cannot be dismantled by someone operating from the outside out of envy. Your self-belief was the most intimate target of all, and this one I need to name honestly, because it came the closest to working. There were moments in the quiet, in the dark, in the internal places you would not say out loud, where you started to wonder if they had a point, whether you were too much, whether the version of you they described had some truth you were simply not able to see. Those moments were the real battlefield of this whole season, not the external drama, not the public-facing conflict. The real war was in those private moments of doubt, and you won there too. You did not let the manufactured uncertainty take up permanent residence. You came back to yourself every single time. Your community was the final major target. They tried to turn the people around you and leave you isolated inside the very circles you had built. But isolation does not diminish a person like you. It clarifies. The quiet that descended during that season was not empty. It was full of the truth of who you are, unmediated by outside voices and stripped of everything that was not real. You learned yourself in that quiet, became more certain in that quiet, and emerged from it, knowing who is genuinely in your corner with a precision that no amount of social noise could have produced. Everything they sent, every angle they worked, every level they escalated to, you are here, you are standing, you are still, completely undeniably yourself. The impulse to correct the record is completely understandable. When you discover that the people around you have been receiving a version of you that is not real, everything in you wants to sit down with them and walk through what actually happened. That impulse comes from a place of integrity, from a genuine desire to be known accurately. But acting on that impulse is the wrong move. The people who matter, the ones who are genuinely discerning, who are emotionally and spiritually intelligent, who are actually paying close attention, do not need you to explain yourself. They are already watching you. They can already see the gap between the version of you they were presented with and the version of you that actually shows up. They are already running their own accounting. When you step into that process to try to speed it along, you actually slow it down, because the moment you start defending yourself, the perception shifts from someone who is simply being real to someone who is actively managing their image, and that is the exact opposite of who you are. The people who are not discerning enough to see through the narrative on their own, or who are too aligned with the person who came for you to be objective about any of it, those people are not your concern right now. You do not have the time, the energy, or frankly the obligation to try to convince people who have already committed to a position. Let them stay where they are. The consequence of that choice belongs entirely to them. What you do instead is this. You continue to be exactly who you are, in every room, without performance and without self-censorship. You let your consistency serve as the argument. You let your character function as the correction. You let the full, unedited, unapologetic version of yourself move through the world and rewrite the narrative without a single defensive word attached to it. Your presence is already speaking. It is speaking right now, loudly to every person who has the discernment to hear it. The energy that belongs to this moment is not grief. It is not even relief, though relief is entirely valid. The energy of this moment is the energy of someone who has just received confirmation of what they always suspected about themselves deep down. You are not to be played with, not in an aggressive, confrontational way, but in the deepest, most settled, most immovable way that exists. There is a version of confidence that does not need to announce itself, does not go looking for vengeance or validation or public recognition, and does not perform itself for an audience. It simply exists as a fact, and then moves accordingly. That is the kind of confidence that belongs to this moment, and it is being fully activated in you right now. This season of reclamation is not about returning to war. That war is over, and you won it without fighting. This is about reclaiming every inch of territory that was disrupted, every area of your life that interference touched, every piece of self-certainty that was chipped at, every opportunity that was blocked by someone else's agenda, every connection that was muddied by manufactured drama. You are reclaiming all of it, not through drama, not through retaliation, but through the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly what they are owed and has the patience, the power, and the divine backing to receive every bit of it in full. This is sovereign energy. This is the energy of someone who walked through something that was designed to function as a ceiling and discovered on the other side that it was actually a floor, the foundation for something bigger than what existed before the warfare began. You are not behind. You are not starting over from nothing. You are beginning from a position of power that was earned inside the fire, and the people who lit that fire are watching you walk out of it, carrying things they cannot name, cannot replicate, and will never possess. When sustained and coordinated attacks are aimed at a person from multiple directions, those attacks create a real obstruction. The things that are meant to flow toward you, love, opportunity, peace, abundance, genuine connection, they back up behind the blockage. They get held in place, but they are never destroyed. They wait, and when the obstruction is removed, they begin moving again with the full force of everything that was held behind them. That is what is happening now. Pay attention to the movement. In your romantic and personal life, something is coming into alignment, specifically matched to who you actually are, not the version of you that was constructed and distributed by someone operating from jealousy. What is moving toward you now does not require you to manage yourself down to make another person comfortable. It is not threatened by your light, and it does not need you smaller or quieter to feel safe in your presence. Whether this arrives as something entirely new, or as the genuine restoration of something real that was disrupted, warmth is entering your field. Receive it without keeping your armor on. In your creative work and your financial life, the interference that was creating friction is being cleared. The ideas that were backed up are beginning to flow freely again. The resources that were being delayed are beginning to move toward you. The collaborations and opportunities that are genuinely aligned with the full expression of your gifts, not a diminished version, not a performance of what your gifts could be, but the complete and unapologetic reality of what you carry, are beginning to take clear shape. In your closest relationships, the clearing has already been underway. The people who were present for proximity rather than genuine investment, who benefited from your energy without ever truly honoring it, they have been or are being moved out of your immediate circle. What their departure creates is not emptiness, it is room, the kind that allows real connection to breathe, deepen and grow. The people genuinely aligned with who you are and where you are going are already being drawn toward you. Trust what you feel when certain people arrive. You are entering the chapter that everything you walked through was quietly, deliberately building toward, not in spite of the warfare, because of it. Now look at where they are. The arrogance they performed has been humbled in front of the very people they performed it for. The manipulation they ran has been exposed, contradicted, cross-referenced and cracked open by its own internal inconsistencies. The darkness they operated from has returned to them in the exact form and with the exact force that the laws governing these things always apply to what you send at someone who is covered. They drew the portrait. The portrait came home and claimed them. And you, the one who was described as the problem, the threat, the person who needed to be managed and neutralized, you are still here, still building, still moving, more certain of yourself, more rooted in who you are, and more anchored in your purpose than you were before any of this began. That is not coincidence. That is the completion of something that was never, not for a single moment, not even in the darkest part of the season, in genuine danger of ending badly for you. The light in you is not circumstantial. It does not depend on whether the people around you are supportive, or the season is easy, or the attacks have finally stopped. It is constitutional. It is who you are at the level beneath everything else. It was there before any of this started. It is here now, clarified by everything that tried to put it out, and it will be present in every chapter ahead of you, brighter for having survived the attempt. The version of you they came for no longer exists, not because they succeeded, but because you outgrew it. You are rooted now in a way you were not before, rooted in the truth of who you are, what you carry, who is genuinely with you, and what is genuinely and rightfully for you. And a rooted thing does not fear the storm that tries to move it. It grows deeper because of the storm. Someone declared war on you. A coalition was assembled. The operation escalated into territory it should have never entered. Everything that person had was deployed against you, and you won, not because you were fighting, but because you were built for exactly this, because you stayed aligned when the pressure was at its absolute maximum, and because the protection surrounding your life is real, it is active, and it does not make exceptions for people who believe they are clever enough to outrun consequence. And now they don't want to hear a single word about you from the person who started it, because that person cannot say your name without the room remembering exactly what was done, cannot bring you up without the evidence of their failure arriving in the same breath, and cannot retell the story they crafted without people now seeing completely through the craft of it. Your life is the rebuttal, your standing is the verdict, your light is the sentence. Walk in that all the way. No apologies, no explanations owed to people who were never going to receive you fairly. No more making yourself smaller for rooms that were never actually too small. You were simply surrounded by people who needed you to believe they were. The road ahead is open, genuinely, completely open, and you are walking into it as the fully awakened, fully refined, fully authorized version of yourself that this entire season was quietly and deliberately building toward. Go be everything they were terrified you would become, because chosen one you already are.